Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Before we go any further, if you could please subscribe down below. Great videos going up on the channel. A lot of new ones going up we're taking pieces of old ones for Kirsty, and then Rob's done a couple recently, so it's not just me on every single video. But I have been making a lot of videos for the channel. As I always say, please comment down below. I look at the comments and go throughout and see what videos I think would be beneficial to our community and a lot of common questions that people ask. I will be doing a video on why going to the worst case scenario is unconditional self-life and other acceptance and a lot of manners for chronic OCD, and why going towards the worst case scenario is basically the premise of unconditional self-life and other acceptance and how that gets confused with a lot of people. So basically the chapter in this book is chapter 8. It's called Racing and Intrusive Thoughts. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book, so At Last a Life by Paul David. But there are things in here that don't correlate exactly to OCD and can really get chronic sufferers stuck. And so I think it's really good to clear up some of these things. So I'm just going to open up by reading the opening statement. Worrying, obsessive, intrusive, or racing thoughts are some of the symptoms of anxiety that can bother people the most. They do not understand how they can have these thoughts that seem so scary and come with such impact and frequency. So when you first develop OCD, it can be, really bewildering in a lot of ways because you really don't know what's going on. That's what happened with me. Now that where I am now, I definitely understand that I had chronic OCD, just not clinically latched my whole entire life. I have lots of rituals and compulsive behaviors and stuff like that. So it was definitely in the background a lot of the times. I just thought I had weird quirks. These worrisome, intrusive thoughts seem to come automatically, and those that suffer from them have little to no control over their presence. Now, this is super important to talk about because there are a lot of people out there, not so much in the OCD community, but you do see it, about how to, reframe thoughts and how to control your thoughts, and that's an illusion. The more you try to control these type of things, the more OCD recovery will elude you. So there's actually no control over any of this stuff, and we don't need to control any of this stuff because that's not moving with uncertainty, it's moving with certainty. So there's about, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I'm not going to cover all of them. There's a lot of different points in this chapter. It's a long chapter. It's 15 pages long. But we're going to go through some of them. I'm going to break down some of the benefits with OCD, and I'm going to talk about why some of them don't exactly pan out with OCD. So, number 1, why your thoughts never seem to cease. So that's an important one. So basically, thinking has become an addiction, as he says. And then we have what's called the fear of fear, or the fear of the cycle, fear of being stuck. A lot of the times, one of the main things that's keeping people stuck is that fear of just what they're actually dealing with, the fear of the unknown of OCD. Not even just the fear of their specific fear, but the fear of the whole entire disorder. It's not really well understood. It's also really hard to understand it if you don't have it, because it moves and morphs in all different ways. I always use the water fountain, right? The water fountain's going down on the board. Water is trickling in between. A lot of people just understand the water on top of the board. But to really understand how it goes in between the creaks and cracks, you kind of have to experience it in a lot of ways because it moves around in ways that someone who's just trying to help you with no actual experience of what it feels like, they don't really understand what's going on. And I know that because I hear people talk and I could just tell they don't really quite understand it. That's not putting anyone down. It's just the reality, as I said all the time. I don't know what it's like to not have any legs. I'm not going to go around and scream at people who don't have legs and be like, I know everything about this. It doesn't even make sense from a common sense standpoint. So, how do I control my thoughts? So, the simple answer is that you can't control them. You can't control your thoughts any more than you can manage your heartbeat. If you could, then you would be able to continually think positive thoughts and stop unwanted thoughts coming, which we know through experience is not possible. If it were, then there would be no negative, worrisome, racing thoughts, and you wouldn't be reading this article. There is some major truth to that. As he said, you can't control your thoughts. I get it. Wouldn't it be awesome if you just had a couple bad thoughts or you had OCD and you could just instantly divert and just make it go away? If that were the case, OCD wouldn't be the disorder that it is, but it is the disorder that it is, and we know that that doesn't work. So he then talks about thoughts are just energy forms. I don't use this terminology. I don't see it has a lot of benefit for OCD, but I will read it. Thoughts are just a form of energy passing through your consciousness, and they're mainly formed through the energy of you're currently experiencing. So if you're feeling depressed, then they tend to have a sad flavor. Now, I do agree with that. If you're angry, then they usually have an angry flavor to them. And if you're happy, then they most likely have a joyous flavor. The one thing he's missing is the reason why those thoughts are in that manner is because you're scared of the belief system. Belief systems are not talked about entirely too much in this book. This is why the book is last on the reading list. This is a very good book for physical manifestations of anxiety. This book is vital, but this book alone will more than likely, as I said in previous videos, not lead you to full OCD recovery because it doesn't cover the worst case scenarios in a lot of ways. So, why do my intrusive thoughts come with such speed and frequency? So number 3, the intrusive thoughts come with such frequency due to your constant obsession and overthinking. So the fear of fear, constantly engaging, constantly being compulsive, thinking about your thoughts, how to figure them out, constantly using psychoanalysis or psychodynamic therapy, going into the past. Through the need to keep going over things, worrying about things and trying to fix them, it is your overuse of the mind and the thinking process that gives it momentum and forms a habit of constant thinking. This is why your mind can feel exhausted, out of control, and frantic, and like you just want to turn the off button, but you can't. But that really is relatable to OCD. So a lot of people wish that they could just turn the button off, and we can't. It would be really cool if we could, but we can't. That's part of acceptance. Moment is super good at explaining the unconditional life acceptance and self-acceptance of having OCD. You know, that's part of this process, accepting that even if you do everything correctly and the statistics are in your favor, that you'll definitely make progress. But even if you never make progress, which is covering the worst case scenario, which is straight out of Albert Ellis's book, out of the man who created cognitive behavioral therapy, it is part of unconditional acceptance. So, why are your thoughts so negative? People ask me why their thoughts always seem to be mostly negative, and my reply is because these are the thoughts which you give the most attention to, and the thoughts you give the most attention to will keep repeating within your mind as you are not allowing them to pass them through. Very good point. You're just not accepting them for what they are. As I always tell people into the recent video, there's a major difference between looking at the core fear and why you're stuck, the fear of being stuck forever, the fear of rejection, the fear of cancel culture, a societal outcast, the fear of being no connection forever. These are the types of core fears. Without those core fears being addressed, sometimes the thoughts will just shoot on autopilot no matter how many exposures you do. This is super important because I know there's a lot of people that watch these videos and message me and say, you know, I've had people say to me, I think I'm chasing exposures. And then they explain it to me and they're definitely chasing exposures. Now, a lot of people will say stuff like exposures need to be set by someone who has a degree or something like that. And that doesn't even make any sense. You could set exposures for yourself. I'm not saying a therapist, a coach, or a psychiatrist or psychologist can't help you, but you don't need someone with a degree to tell you to go towards things you're afraid of. It really just doesn't make any sense. Okay. Here's where it starts to become a little bit not applicable for OCD recovery. So, don't put belief into your negative thoughts. Now, I'm going to explain this in a very meticulous manner because there are points of it that do have validity. Once you put belief into any negative or intrusive thought and identify with it, then it will most likely bring down your mood. And so negative thinking will happen more. So, he's correct on this. When you identify with something, so when we see it in sports, they identify as a football player. I am a football player. My life is football. Okay, it's a crude example, but follow me here. Instead of just being like, I'm a guy that plays football that probably won't be there at some point in my life, but I'm still a guy or a female. So when you attach your identity to something, when that thing doesn't go the way you want it to and it goes down, your identity goes down with it. Simply subconsciously because you have attached your whole entire self-worth and meaning to this identity. This is a huge problem. This is a huge problem with OCD. People will attach their whole entire identity to their relationships. Or OCD. Kirsty and Hannah have talked about this ad nauseum. Very good stuff. You're just a person who's in a relationship. You're not your relationship. And when you think your relationship, when something goes wrong, you now subconsciously, because you've attached a belief system to it, have brought down your mood. It's basically exactly what's going on. So, this is super important too. If a thought keeps repeating itself within your mind, don't try and stop it. So we're not engaging with thoughts as they come. Don't try to reason with it. Just allow it to repeat itself until it runs out, which, without the fuel of your constant focus and attention, it will. Not always. Because if you don't work on the fear, this is just moving with uncertainty. Everything he said right there. Don't try to reason with it. Just allow it to repeat itself until it runs out of energy, which, without the fuel of your constant focus and attention, it will. That is not entirely true for OCD recovery. A lot of the just random stuff that pops in your head, a lot of people, I say this, I had a new thought today. I had a new thought this moment. You're engaging with every single thought. The problem is the main fear while you're stuck. When you talk to someone with chronic OCD, there's usually a main fear or something that's drastically keeping them stuck. For me, it was somatic OCD, body dysmorphic type fears or body dysmorphic disorder. It doesn't matter if it's a real disorder or just fears of body dysmorphia. ROCD, POCD, you could have many fears at once. But those main fears for a lot of chronic OCD people will more than likely not unlatch until you work on unconditional self-life and other acceptance. Okay, why intrusive thoughts are of no importance whatsoever to their content. This has validity to it. What continually changes can never be real, and your thoughts are changing all the time as your emotions are. That is garbage for OCD recovery. Might be good for GAD, not good for OCD recovery. What continually changes can never be real. One of the biggest compulsions in OCD recovery is people trying to see if something is real or if something is fake. You cannot do that. That is moving with uncertainty and unconditional self-life and other acceptance. It doesn't matter what you think or how you feel. This is true. The world spins the same for everyone. The outside doesn't change just because of how you think. It's your personal experience. This is super important. If saliva was the reason that I was chronically stuck, then everyone salivates, so everyone would be chronically stuck, or at least annoyed, even if they didn't have a disorder. But we know that's not the case. Kirsty talks about this, looking at other people. It's not the entire journey, but looking at other people and thinking, well, they're not scared of that. So it has to be the belief is the driving factor. I talk about this all the time. There's no need to actually figure this out, but it is cool to think about. The reason why certain fears might stick with certain people is because of the conditioned beliefs they have in their life at that point in time. Environment, cultural, socioeconomics, their experiences in life, their genetics. So Kirsty and Hannah, they value connection. I don't really value connection that much. I love my wife, but I don't put a lot on connection. So why would it stick to that? Because I'm not afraid and have no value on that with my experiences and my culture and my background, particular to me. There are reasons unknown that you don't need to know on why this has stuck for you. Could ROCD stick in the future? POCD? Sure. I don't see how because I accept that unconditionally, those aspects of my life. This is the one that is the not good for OCD. Don't see your thoughts as reality. How many times are your thoughts about a person or a situation entirely wrong? Someone who has insecure thinking may constantly think that their partner is going to leave and so need constant reassurance. That is true. Someone who has anxious thoughts may believe that everything will go wrong. Then they will feel like they have to stay in constant control and so may spend all their day worrying about that. Where's the part right here? Thoughts are not reality. They are illusions brought to life by your belief in them. Yes, they are brought to life by your beliefs. One of the only times he really actually talks about beliefs. But to say that they're not reality will not work more than likely for chronic OCD. Your OCD can always work around that. That is not unconditional self-life and other acceptance. That is certainty. Your thoughts are not reality. You're looking for certainty. Again, this may work for the Gen Pop, but it's more than likely not going to work for chronic OCD recovery. Okay. Distracting yourself from your thoughts is just a form of suppression. Now, distraction has benefits. What are good, healthy distractions? building life structure, getting up at a reasonable time, going to bed at a reasonable time, being balanced with your caffeine or alcohol consumption if you can use them in a balanced manner. Many people cannot. Not sitting on your phone all day and stuff like that. So, like if you're engaged with your friends at a dinner and your phones are all in your pockets and you're not looking at your phone at dinner, which I don't think has benefits for a lot of people, you're healthily engaged. I talked about this with someone recently. They say, you know, when I'm with my friends, I don't really notice my fear because you're healthily engaged. But a lot of people in this community will tell you to go out and constantly distract yourself. I see people say like, you have to make sure you get good sleep. You can't be tired. This is all fear of fear here. Even if you slept 3 hours a day, even if you sat on the couch and you were aware of your thoughts, sensation, urges, images, you can still handle it to the best of your degree at this point in your recovery process. Okay, here's a good one. How do I release past negative thoughts? So maybe false real event or false memory OCD or anything along the lines of that. If you have constant thoughts about the way someone treated you or a bad experience you went through and keep regurgitating it in your mind, then the memory of this experience is never released. That's true. The thought will just keep gaining energy, and so the brain will keep on repeating it, which again and again will disturb your peace of mind. It's not the past experience that is hurting you. It is you holding on to it that is. So he's basically talking about it's the belief you have about the past. That should not have happened. I need certainty. I need to know for sure. You don't need certainty and you don't need to know for sure. And even if you did do something, you can accept yourself unconditionally. That is how Rob got under false memory OCD. A lot of people get this wrong. I see a lot of people telling people that just moving with uncertainty, false memory, real events, severe POCD, these really locked in chronic ones where exposures don't seem to cut it for people, thoughts don't seem to cut it. Unconditional self-life and other acceptance has been shown. We see it time and time again with people we talk to, people that are fully recovered, people who are making recovery process, had to go towards the worst case scenario with unconditional acceptance. Now, that's enough for this. He basically goes on to summarize. This chapter is really good. And the next chapter is success stories. It's a great chapter in the book. But I do want to talk about the worst case scenario and why a lot of people might not understand that. So people say stuff like going towards the worst case scenario is not unconditional self-life and other acceptance. Albert Ellis clearly states that that is unconditional self-life and other acceptance. I don't have the book with me, but I will find it when I do that video. He said, you can accept yourself for what you have. He talks about the recovery process of, anything in general. Even if you do everything that's deemed correct, even if you do all the right things and you never make a single ounce of progress, I can actually see it in my mind. He said, it would be frustrating and tough and you could still accept yourself and you wouldn't like it. It's not agreement and you could still like it. That is why going towards the worst case scenario is unconditional self-life and other acceptance. It's clear as day in the book. It's stated. Anyone that understands the books, Albert Ellis, if he was alive right now, would absolutely say the worst case scenario is unconditional self-life and other acceptance. It's unconditional. So it's in the tin. If you're accepting the worst case scenario, you are being unconditional of the worst case scenario. And it's written out in the book. A lot of people just when I ask people, they're like, why is it important to go towards a worst case scenario? I ask them very clearly. I don't know what's going on in your head. I don't know how compulsive you're being with the internal thermometer, but a lot of people will be going towards recovery, going towards exposures, moving with uncertainty for years. Maybe they're 50% better arbitrarily, but their brain's not letting them off the hook because they still believe that their fear is real. Again, it's not about figuring out if it's real or if it happened or if it might happen. It's about unconditional acceptance of the entire picture. If it did happen, that's okay. Wouldn't like it. If it's going to happen, that's also okay. I can handle it. And that's what that means. And that's in the book when you read the book. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great day.